Welcome to Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. Coming up on the programme this week.
When you open up about how you're feeling, then that makes someone way more comfortable and way more likely to then go, oh, you know what, I've got this going on.
Maybe something that we've lost as a society is that sense of some of those places we would go to as a community. I think those abilities to create those environments has been diminished.
I talk about how prevention is better than cure because there is no cure once someone has taken their own life.
And I'll be reminding you how you can make connections with mental health organisations within your community. It's Mental Health Monday.
The home of the UK's conversation about mental health. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for checking out this week's show. Thanks for your regular downloaders, and thank you to everyone checking us out, maybe for the first, second, maybe even third time. It's always a pleasure to get new people involved in the Mental Health Monday community. If you want to join the Mental Health Monday Facebook group, you can get video clips of some of the content that we have from the programme. You can see the faces of the people that we speak to as well. And of course, links in all the podcasts to signposting services that might hopefully be useful for you. We're into the World Cup, and of course, last week's episode focused on some of those issues around gambling that some people might face during this time. I'd urge people to check that out. A really interesting conversation with David Quinty. And actually, a lot of people might be spending some time in the pub during the festive period and, of course, during the World Cup period. And actually, there's another reason to do that. This week, as part of the Humen Rise Against Suicide campaign. Let me tell you about this, because it's actually culminating in the UK's first pub pilgrimage. This is taking place on Sunday, the 4th of December, 2022, at 16 pubs across 13 locations around the country. Now, Humen, Humen, is a charity set up to look at the issue and tackle the issue around male mental health problems, male suicide as well. And the walk is actually going to be 5,151 metres, just over 5k. The reason for that specific amount is that each of those metres, each step, will represent a man who's been lost to suicide in the last year. So these walks are taking place towards these pubs in cities right across the country this coming Sunday as the podcast goes out on the 4th of December. Now, there is a list in the podcast notes of the pubs which are taking part, so do get involved if you're able to support that within a local group. It's not about heading in there and getting tanked up. It's actually, as we'll hear in the conversation, about heading in there and finding your community, finding people that you can share an honest conversation with about what you're going through and maybe what the people around you are going through too. And now, ahead of all of this, the charity has done some research into men's habits when it comes to socialising. Around about 85% of men say they do not discuss their feelings with their other male friends in pubs and bars, despite the fact that actually 78% agree that men should speak to each other more about their personal matters. It's a really interesting set of circumstances and set of statistics that they've come out. 3 in 10 men will meet their friends at a pub or a bar after a stressful day, and yet so many of them won't then talk about the causes of their stress and how they're feeling. It's about conversation, it's about opening up conversation, and it's also about listening to other people around you and creating those spaces where that can be a safe conversation. Now, River Hawkins is the founder of Humen. We're going to be speaking to him as part of this week's podcast. We'll obviously hear about how you can get involved in this particular event, but also why he's so passionate about this particular subject as well. So I caught up with River just ahead of the event to talk about what was going on and to find out some more about how people can get involved.
Yeah, exactly. This is the second year of our Rise Against Suicide campaign, and it's an annual event where we walk the number of meters representative to the number of men who took their own lives in the previous year. So unfortunately, we're actually walking almost 500 meters more this year, 5,151 meters. So it highlights the issue that obviously the number has increased, and you know the people left devastated, family, friends. So this is what it's about.
I think that really works because I think, there are endurance challenges where people will walk, for however many ultra marathons, but actually there's something in that. And I think highlighted brilliant by the fact that this is the second year that you can actually say, we intend to not have to walk at all. But actually this year we're having to walk more. And I think that's symbolically, that's so powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, and obviously very unfortunate. But this is exactly the reason why we're doing it and why I founded Humen. And this year we are focusing it on the theme of it is starting from pubs, because of the fact that we did a 2,000 person survey study, and we found that, obviously a lot of men are in those, those are the cornerstone to a lot of communities, these pubs, and where men feel comfortable. However, through this study, it still said 85% of men felt uncomfortable to talk about their feelings, but would, talk about sports or humor and joking. But if we're able to get to where men already are, then that helps with then being able to signpost them to other support, and then also destigmatize this idea around being able to open up.
I think the survey pulls out two stats, which I think summarize the mental health conversation in this country absolutely perfectly. One, that 85% of men won't talk about their feelings in the pub. But two, that 78%, almost the same number, say they should be talking more about their mental health. So it's that step, isn't it? We know that these are the right conversations to have, and we know we should be having them, and yet we're not having them. And to me, that means one, that people are switched on to it to a certain extent, and two, they're just looking for an in, if you like. They're looking for a reason to have these conversations. I guess that's what events like yours actually do. It creates the reason to have that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, and also statistically, men are 3 times more likely to take their own lives than women, but half as likely to seek support. However, obviously that has to be put into context, because there are men who are reaching out for help, and this is part of why I set up Humen, because there were campaigns around saying men just talk, men need to talk, just talk, men talk. But if we don't then listen, and really listen to, I talk about listening to hear rather than just listening to respond, then it's not going to change. And a lot of support is focused on crisis management. So helping people once they're, sometimes too far gone. And I talk about how prevention is better than cure, because there is no cure once someone has taken their own life. So it does really have to focus on prevention, because there are men who have sought help, there are men who've taken their own lives who have actually sought professional help. And obviously everything is circumstantial, but I think we need to, what's really important is this focus on prevention and not just crisis.
Yeah, and I think that idea that there's an intervention way upstream is huge, not just in terms of the difference that it would make, but also how we can get involved in that. Because if we have those interventions upstream, they're not involving GPs, and they're not involving a trip to A&E, and they're not involving having to call an emergency service or an emergency helpline. It's that conversation in the pub, or over dinner, over a lunch, going out for a coffee, where you go, have you been feeling? I've not been feeling great recently. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What is it? What have you been going through? And I think that thing where you could walk away from a conversation going, I'm glad we had that chat, or I feel better having had that chat. That's a much better place to be in, isn't it, in terms of our mental health, than having to talk about those 5,000 plus people who we lose in every single year through suicide.
Well, exactly. And that's why I set up Humen, and what we provide is the human space, the gym for your mind, for those conversations to take place in a space where men know that they're not going to be judged. There's no fear of misjudgment, or they're going to be scolded, or there's a burden that they might be followed up on it. And because at the time, and again, why we're doing this theme of pubs is because men aren't necessarily having those conversations in those pubs, in those restaurants, in those social situations, because of that fear, or other reasons behind it. So this is why it's even more important, and an evolution to be able to do it in a pub, to do them from pubs this year, because we're furthering that destigmatization of it.
Do you have sort of tricks, if you like, or sort of little conversation starters that you use, or people say, well, what do you say? How do you start that conversation? What are those things that you advise?
Yeah, I mean, I was just doing an interview earlier, and the presenter was talking about this Ask Twice campaign, and and there has been the campaign around Ask Twice, ask if there's, ask them twice, ask how are you, but ask twice. But actually, I find what I say is, in answer to this question, is that actually when you open up about how you're feeling and you lead by example, then that makes someone way more comfortable and way more likely to then go, oh, you know what, I might relate to some element of that, and you know what, I've got this going on. Because it removes the fear, and it removes, I guess, the exposure of, reduces the risk of feeling too exposed or feeling too vulnerable, because vulnerability by definition involves like exposing yourself. So if you then are able to share something about yourself that's going on, you're in that shared space where it can give someone the confidence or permission in some cases to feel like they can share back to you.
I think that's that's great advice as well, because I think there's nothing wrong with saying ask twice, because it's, are you okay? Are you sure you're okay? The theory behind that, I think, is the right thing. But actually, I think
putting the pressure all on them rather than making it a unified, collective, shared experience.
Yeah, and I think that the empathy, I think, is the word there. That if you can say, I'll tell you what, I've been having a really rough time of it. Do you fancy going for a drink, or do you fancy meeting up for something? And then you instigating a conversation which goes, actually, last few weeks work's been like this, or family situation's been like this, or the cash situation is anything that puts you in a position which basically opens that door to say, here is a space where we're talking about things that aren't going for us at the moment. I've just been feeling down. I've not been able to get out to the gym. I've not been looking after myself. I've not been eating well. I've been drinking too much. Any of those things that then allows you to then give them essentially, here's the floor. Now you say your bit. I think that's cathartic for both people then, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you empathize, you connect on a deeper level, and you have that shared experience. And also, I want to point out that obviously, addiction and alcohol abuse or substance abuse is a huge contributor to poor mental health, or how people feel like they, one of the only ways that they feel maybe they can deal with it, because they might not know any other way, this sort of numbing. But you don't have to be teetotal to be able to enjoy that environment of that pub. It is, as I said earlier, it is also like a cornerstone to a lot of communities where people feel warm and at home, an extension of their home in a way. So I just think that's important to point out, that it isn't about this drink and forget mentality at all.
I was going to ask you about that. You said the word there, and I've got it down here as something I wanted to mention, that actually maybe something that we've lost as a society is that sense of some of those places we would go to as a community. I mean, you watch like EastEnders and they're in the pub like every single night, but actually, but that's a useful, dramatic sort of thing to be able to hang an event off, because you go, right, how do we get people into a room? But then if you say, particularly post-pandemic as well, where people's lives have changed and that people's sort of behaviors have changed as well, I think those abilities to create those environments has been diminished somewhat. I think maybe some people still see it on the school run, with the playground waiting for the kids, sort of parents similar ages kids. You can sort of have conversations there, but that idea of there's a go-to place where people go and sit down and talk about anything and everything, and the gossip and the traffic and the whatever's going on, I think feels like we have lost that.
Yeah, and exactly. But then we're going to that place that's known for a lot of people as that place where they may have opened up, or spoken about something, or many events that have taken place, as we said, because it is the cornerstone to all of communities. So if we're able to go to those places that there's elements of those conversations already taken place, but some are held back, and we're able to remove that and highlight the point of, this is okay to do this, and this is actually beneficial for you, then it can enhance this environment of this experience of what they already feel is so welcoming and an extension of their home to them.
There's another stat from the survey, River, that says 37% of the Ben survey didn't want to bring the mood down, which is why they didn't mention it. And I think when we talk about confidence in these situations, men should also feel confident that a conversation about how you're getting on, how you're feeling, if you're struggling, if you're not struggling, when you felt great, when you didn't, doesn't have to be a buzzkill, doesn't have to be a mood killer. Actually, it's a very relatable conversation. It allows for anyone within that sort of earshot, anyone within that environment, to be part of that conversation. I think that's something which we could instantly step over and say, that's not something we're going to have to worry about. Because if anything, it creates that floor where you're more likely to have something to say, because you're going to relate to whatever element of it that fits your journey.
Yeah, it isn't it reminded me of when I was starting, before I started Humen, and I remember being at some an event and telling someone about this, and they said, oh, well, and it was, I think, 3 or 4 people. One of the people said to me, oh, that's a conversation killer. And I thought to myself, Well, I prefer it to be what you perceive as a conversation killer than, more men actually killing themselves and taking their own lives. So it isn't, people would prefer to have these conversations. And as you say, it's actually a more richer experience than having to be at their funeral.
I think so. And I think that person, and I don't know who that person was, but there's a chance that maybe they themselves, I don't know that situation you're in, but there's a strong chance that they might be thinking, oh, actually, this maybe is touching on something that I'm going through, and I don't know how to respond in it because I'm not used to having these sorts of conversations. Therefore, what I'll do is I'll lob a grenade in your direction and try and shut everything. I'll try and shut everything down.
Yeah, and exactly. And this is where I came to starting Humen, because of my own experience of hitting a rock bottom and trying to do it myself for several months, and then finally going to the doctor. And as I said earlier, it's all focused on crisis and long wait lists. And then I said, finally, when I got talking therapy, you're given 6 sessions through the NHS after being on a long wait list. And I said, this is starting to help, but what happens now? We finish next week. And this was in the 5th session. And they said, we can only give you more sessions if you're suicidal. And I thought to myself, so I either have to lie and say I'm suicidal, or be suicidal for me to continue to get this help. And then there's the third issue, is that men, as to the point you've just made about this person, men could be in denial about it as well. And they could be on that route there, but not there yet. And it just isn't a helpful way to be able to support people. So this is why prevention is so vital.
I think there's something in there as well in regard to often people who are struggling with their mental health don't feel that they are worthy of help or support. So if you offer them that opportunity to say, well, do you really need help? That there's a strong chance they will go, no, give it to someone else. If there's somebody else, give it to them. That's fine. And actually, and this has been a conversation we've had on the podcast before, where particularly people with eating disorders, self-esteem is a big issue with people with eating disorders. And actually, during the pandemic, when they were going, all right, we can't have these face-to-face meetings anymore, a lot of people got, right, okay, that's fine. I understand you guys have got to go and work in A&E now, and you've got to go, that's fine. And then not then enrolling on the online courses or not partaking in there because the self-esteem wasn't driving them forward to do that. And we've got to be so aware of that, haven't we? Particularly when we have those conversations. Do you really need support? Well, I think the fact that we're even having this conversation now over the phone or whatever it is tells you that I'm someone who probably does need a little bit of help, and I'm probably not the best person to self-diagnose. I think that's absolutely huge. When I looked at I was reading up on your story through the website wearehumen.org, and there was this when you talk about your own journey, and there's this sense of, I didn't want to die, but I didn't really want to live anymore. And I think a lot of people relate to that, myself included, in my early 20s, that I found life incredibly whelming, like not good, not bad, just sort of. And actually, that, I mentioned the word indifference before, that indifference to existence was actually something which I found to be, although it didn't come with a bell which went, ooh, suicidal thoughts, and it didn't come with a bell which went, manic enthusiasm over a different issue. It came with a life is just this.
Yeah, and I talk about what's. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and actually, I think that's such a huge thing that when you internalize all of that, you perceive your world to be one of, well, actually, I don't really make a difference, and if I did, it wouldn't matter, and actually, I don't really care anyway, which I think is a really dangerous place to be. And it was so interesting to hear that you'd been in that similar place.
And that's exactly why I created the Humen Space, the Gym for Your Mind, in the way I did. It's about prevention and maintenance, because there's what's just as serious is this sort of set of or this experience that we go through of this what I call this muted misery, where you're not, as you say, it's not ringing a bell where you may have attempted suicide or done something where people notice, but you are living a miserable existence, and it's maybe this sort of mediocre life or this life that you didn't expect, and that's just as terrible. Men suffering in silence in this way, and just continuing to then end their life not living happy or fulfilled lives. And obviously life isn't all happy 24/7, but to live in this sort of muted misery for the majority of your life is just as tragic and an emergency.
There was someone who described, someone very close to me described a situation of, again, not feeling suicidal, but giving the example of they would cross the road without checking, because actually it didn't really matter if there was a car coming or not.
Yeah.
And I thought, what a great way of, it was a dangerous thing to do, of course, but I thought it was a great example of a mindset, which is not the movie image of the man head in hands looking at the whiskey bottle or anything like that. It was somebody going about their daily life. It was someone popping to the shop. It was someone doing that. But it was the mindset was of this particular outcome or lack of outcome or disregard to what an outcome was. And I think those are more the nuanced things that on that range of emotions that people can have and feel about themselves and about their lives. And it's not the image from, the movie, or it's not something that you recognize from, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Yeah. These are people and lives and thoughts and emotions and feelings.
As you said, it's more nuanced, and it's, obviously on a spectrum, everyone has mental health, and it is, mentally on the more healthy end or on the more unhealthy end. And again, going back to the human space, human for your mind, if we are able to provide these spaces where people can go on a regular basis to improve and maintain their mental health, then it makes it easier for these more nuanced, or not even nuanced, but this other sort of, that middle point of this sort of acceptance to, well, this is it, and I don't really care anymore. As you gave this example, I don't care if I walk across the street and I get hit. I'm not actively trying to take my own life, but I don't mind if that happens because I don't really enjoy my life, or I'm not where I want to be. And I spoke about this feeling in this no man's land of not wanting to live but not wanting to die, so I didn't know what to do. And it really felt like this no man's land, because this is a point, everything around men's mental health that really isn't spoken about, or mental health in general, and that position can be just as difficult. And in some ways, your head can try and tell you, in my case, that, oh, you're not brave enough to then try to, you're mediocre even in this sort of thing, which is horrible. And obviously I've come out of that now, which I'm so grateful for. And that's what did keep me going, is that I still had this sort of glimmer of hope, which I know so many men wouldn't react like that or wouldn't respond like that. And I wanted to fight to change that, because I still had that hope, and then I got through it. So I thought, I really want to be able to, because I've been through this, like I know so other people would be through and have been through it and are going through it, that I really want to do everything I can to change that for them.
Yeah, I like the idea that you're trapped in the no man's land, but you have a vision of where it is that you want to go. And I think even for those people who don't have that vision or can't picture a happy existence, almost just to believe that there is an opportunity to build that vision, and the feelings that will come with that build will take you, and that journey, and it is a journey, and it's not really about the destination, and it's not getting to that point, it's about the steps you take along the way. And that's why people like yourself will inspire people, and I'm sure many people have said it to you, that the stories that we tell will inspire them, because when we talk about community, particularly when we talk about men, those stories come from the storytellers, the great people who achieve things. Our history's awash with great men who did amazing things, and they all went through difficult times. And although one of the goals might be, one of the stories might be scored the goal in the FA Cup final, many of these stories are about resilience and embracing persistence and digging in when you need to, running away when you had to, hiding when you had to, and fighting when you needed to as well. And all the while bringing people into that story.
Exactly.
I think the pub is a perfect place for those stories to be told.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, I think there's this not new, but there's, a wave of this sort of positivity, and it can become this toxic positivity where you end up denying, what the human experience is. We can't experience happiness without knowing sadness. The yin and the yang, and it is this sense of like this toxic positivity in the case of denying when something is troubling you, and it's like this, you actually do have to experience your feelings, and actually to push them down through saying no, everything's great all of the time actually can do the reverse effect, obviously. But it's to your point of resilience, there comes in that point of resilience where it's not, you have to build that resilience so that not everything that seemingly negative then is able to bring you down. But I think it is that balance of allowing yourself to feel sad when there is something genuinely that you would feel sad about, and give yourself the appropriate amount of time, whatever that may be.
I don't know about you. You see motivational quotes, the ones that have kind of got the sky in the back. I find them quite exhausting.
I think we've all been guilty of maybe posting them.
Sometimes you see one of them, and it's like there's like a hit rate, and I think maybe some people go every day, oh, that's the thing I needed to hear today. But sometimes sometimes I think my reaction to it is, oh, come on, give me a minute. Yeah. Reach forth for your, and I just think, today's not a reaching forth kind of day. Yeah,
exactly. It's like this thing of like, today, or like, each day is going to be a great day. And then it's like, actually, there's some days where you just got to be like, what, today was SHIT. And I'm accepting that. And, maybe tomorrow will be a great day, but I'm not going to lie and say today was great when it was really terrible.
Yeah, I think it just, you've got to acknowledge sometimes that actually, no, you're allowed to say as well, actually, that's not really relevant for me. I think sometimes people just share them, and I think because they connect with it, I think that's absolutely fine. I'm not criticizing that at all. I think sometimes as well, you've just got to go, yeah, okay, maybe not. But I think that's the yin and the yang thing, isn't it? That's the idea of, well, maybe not. Or maybe that's not right. Or maybe that's great. It's the equivalent of, people who go, oh, I got up this morning and I went for a run at 5 a.m. and I was doing this by 7 a.m. and then I dropped their kids off at school at 8:30 and then I sealed a big deal by 9, and it was like, be inspired by me. And I was like, great, you've had a great day and you're feeling great, that's fine. But what reaction do you think that is going to have?
Yeah, exactly.
From other people, like how are other people going to respond when they see that?
Well, this is what, like, again, why I wanted to create Humen with like our main platform that we use for social is Instagram, and not just talking about the highlight reel, which is sort of the point, going to the point you're talking about of this, our achievements and the great things that are going on, but talking about the things that aren't great, both sides, and giving a full picture, because there is this false sense of living our best life, and it's like sort of part of living our best life is like actually the days that aren't great, and being honest about those, rather than projecting everything that I guess it goes back to also this toxic positivity thing. But
yeah, absolutely. No, there's plenty more in that conversation. Just remind people then. So there's I think it's 13 cities that are involved in this, and pubs in all the major sort of urban hubs of the UK are involved. Just tell us about maybe how people can get involved and what it is that they'll see or do if they do get involved in the challenge.
Yeah, it's across the UK, and we've currently got it's 16 pubs, but as you said, across over 13 cities. And it starts, so the walk of 5,151 meters each one starts at the same time on Sunday, the 4th of December, at 10 a.m. And we'll all be walking at the same time, that number of meters, which will end back at the pub for there to be conversation, and you're able to then donate and get involved. If you can't attend on the day, you can donate by going to our Just Giving page, and going on a Humen website, which is wearehumen.org, Humen spelled Humen, and you can get involved at your local pub. All the locations are there, or you can donate directly.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll point people in the direction of the website, as you say, we are Humen, Humen.org, and then you can find your local pub, get involved there, or just head down to the pub. They got loads of support for this one as well in various different pubs in different parts of the country. People are showing up.
Yeah, exactly. We've got 4 in London, so 4 are going out from London, which is where I'm based. and one in every different region across the UK. So we're really excited, and this year we're partnering with Heineken-owned Stars pubs and bars,
and we'll point people in the direction of that in the notes to the podcast as well. River, it's an absolute pleasure to spend some time with you. Thank you so much for sharing your story, to tell us about the work you're doing, your thoughts on sort of the mental health sort of state of the nation as well, and hopefully it's a conversation we can have again in the future. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great speaking with you. Thanks so much.
I hope you've enjoyed this week's podcast. Thanks for checking out Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. You can find me on Twitter at Mr. Mick Coyle. You can also find me, Mick Coyle, on Facebook as well. Don't forget, if you want to speak to somebody about your mental health, you can do so. The Samaritans, free to call on 116 123. You can find mental health services where you are. Just look for the Hub of Hope. Type in your postcode. It'll find those mental health services close to you. And for support in a crisis, you can text SHOUT to 85258. That's if you're experiencing a personal crisis, you're unable to cope and need support. Shout to 85258. That's a text line. Do get involved in those services. In an absolute emergency, always remember the number to call is 999. Thanks for downloading the podcast this week. We'll be back next week with more Mental Health Monday.